Welcome into episode number 6 of the Maine Rundown. Can't believe we're already 6 episodes in. It feels kind of crazy to say that. But here we are, episode 6. I am Zach Turenko, as always, alongside my co-host Jeff Christianberry. Jeff, how are you feeling in the early parts of April here? And the nice weather today. Great weather.
Yeah, I know. Well, we had the big snowstorm last week. Had a couple days off from school, but we're back. We're back in the good shape. Interesting sports time, obviously, as we'll get into. College basketball's over. College hockey finishes this weekend, and then the NFL has the draft. But other than that, we're basically waiting on the Celtics to get to the playoff run. So it's the Masters are on this week.
And the Bruins.
Oh, the Bruins. Yeah, true. Hockey is the same way. Hockey's got like a 2-month playoff. So Masters are on this weekend. I'm a little disappointed. I'm probably not going to be able to watch it because I'll be traveling overseas. It's usually one of my favorite weekends to sit around and watch golf. But yeah, I'm sure they'll have a. It's a weird sports time. It's like it's that time where it's like there's some stuff going on, and then you have the Kentucky Derby coming up eventually in the next couple 5-6 weeks. So yeah, there's always something going on in sports.
For sure. So I gotta say, before we head to the rundown, I just broadcasted probably the longest baseball game I've ever broadcasted in my career. And it was so funny because I'm at the game. It's first, I don't know what the exact temperature was today in Maine, but in Hamden, it was like 72. I get to the game, I'm like, wow, great weather, great day for some baseball, should be a good game. First 4 innings go down in literally 20 minutes. We're talking 1, 2, 3 strikeouts, pop flies, everyone's swinging because they're both teams that hit well. And so, sure, go ahead. And I say on air, hey, my color commentator, his name is Brian. I say, hey, Brian, it feels really interesting. These two teams have played a lot of long games, and this one's going by so fast.
Jinxed it.
Fifth inning might have been the longest inning of human history. 3 hours and 20 minutes later, the game ends. So,
oh my gosh,
yeah, just such a long game.
Yeah, and also before we get to the rundown, let's talk about your big news here. You're becoming it's a co-station manager, or what's the exact title just for next year? Let's hear about it.
So at Quinnipiac, our sports network that broadcasts games, writes articles, does social media stuff, all of that. It's called Quinnipiac Bobcat Sports Network, or QBSN for short. And I applied to be the broadcast manager, so I pretty much oversee all the broadcasters. I kind of help out the president or chairperson as well. And, as a first year applying, I honestly didn't think I'd get it. I just applied because I wanted to apply and see how the interview would go. And I got picked. So, yeah, it is. There's 2 broadcast managers. I'll be working alongside a good friend of mine. His name's Beckett Calkins. I'm really excited for that. But, no, really, really cool. I'm really excited to get going. It's an organization that, even though I've only been here for 1 year, I really care about a lot. And so I'm excited to get going with that.
Now, will you still be able to broadcast games and things, or doing more of the behind the scenes?
Yeah, so I probably will not be calling as many games. That's a part of it, and that's something I'm definitely more than willing to do. One thing I wanted to do was I wanted to enter some leadership roles. I wanted to get try to grow the organization as much as I could. And so, yeah, so a part of it is not calling as many games, or not doing as much, but, I'm super excited for it and excited for the position. And I'm surrounded by a lot of great people, a lot of my friends, which is another big part of it, in the executive board as well. So, yeah, it should be fun. But no, it was pretty cool getting that message and getting that call. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Just as a sophomore, they said, don't screw it up.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
I'll try not to. So we'll head into the rundown now. And Jeff, why don't you start us off with your first topic of the week?
Yeah, the biggest sports story, of course, one of the biggest sports stories, University of Connecticut winning another NCAA championship, beating Purdue last night by 15. We won't talk about the game that much. I think I got to be honest, I didn't see the end of it. I think, it's absurd that the game starts at 9:20 at night on a weeknight.
It's interesting.
It makes zero sense. Why not do, the men's semifinals on Friday and the championship on a Sunday, same time as the Super Bowl, put it on at 6:30. You get mega ratings and everyone can watch it. The fact that they put it on at 9 o'clock, after 9 o'clock on a Monday night. But so the big thing about UConn, they win back-to-back championships. They now have six national championships, all since 1999. They have more national titles than Duke and Indiana, and they're tied with the University of North Carolina. So the question becomes, and they won each of the last 2 tournament, all of their last 12 games by at least 13 points, which is crazy. So never even had a single digit in the last 2 tournaments. Again, I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of Dan Hurley, just some of his antics on the sideline and afterwards doesn't mean he's not a great coach. It's just baffling to me that at a school in the middle of nowhere, a school I almost went to, and was built on two coaches, both men's and women's, who really didn't like each other. All reports are that Gino Auriemma and oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name now, the men's coach for many years, didn't like each other. What's interesting too about UConn is that they've had three different coaches for all these championships. It wasn't like Duke, who had Mike Krzyzewski, or UCLA with John Wooden, or Bob Knight, for Indiana. It's really been a kind of three different eras. And the thing too, why they don't get the same kind of hate, I think, that Duke does, UNC, Kansas, is because they are not great every year. Like, yeah, the last couple of years they have been, but they were years where they weren't even making the tournament. So it's not like, oh, they're in it every year, like Kentucky and, Kansas, like you said. So the question though becomes, you look at the other teams that are ahead of them, like UCLA has more titles than them, but most of those titles came back in the 60s, 70s, where it was not the same kind of tournament that it is now. So the question becomes, is UConn the best college basketball program ever? Like, it seems crazy to say that, and I'm a Duke fan, so but for me as a Duke fan, we get a lot of hate, and a lot of it's deserved. But for me, I'm like, why aren't people hating on UConn more? If you hate on Duke because they win, and I know it's more than just that. I know it's a lot to do with the way they carry themselves and whatever, and the fact that everyone loves them. But like UConn, they're not getting any hate. They're in New England, we don't really care about college sports at all here in New England, like at all. We're all about the pros, and yet this team in the middle of nowhere again has won 6 titles, and the women have won tons more as well. So I don't know. Should they be considered the best program of all time?
I don't know. That's a little too early for me of that. I mean, overall, the championships, I didn't know they had 6 and more than Duke, which is kind of surprising to me. I will say though, but before I even talk about this, you say that no one cares about college sports in New England.
No, comparatively to the South. I mean,
yeah.
No, I'm just saying. When I say no one cares, I mean if UConn was Kentucky, they would be huge, but UConn isn't. Like, outside of stores, nobody in New England cares about UConn. Like, I don't know any friends of mine or even students who are like, oh, I'm a UConn fan. They will say they're Duke fans or they're Kentucky fans or they're college football for sure. They're Bama fan. I mean, Cole's a Bama fan. Like, I don't know anybody that's like, I'm a UConn basketball fan. It's just a weird island. And who's our biggest college team, football or basketball? I mean, basketball would be obviously UConn, and football in New England. Is it BC? BC stinks at football. They have pretty much forever. So it's interesting. It's just like, we're just a pro town. If you listen to Sports Talk Radio, they're always talking, about pros. So
but back to your point, I mean, I think the reason why they don't get hate like Duke is it's just a situation too. Like Duke, Coach K's gone, right? And there is such a big change in college sports for Duke in basketball of how are they going to be. And so all the eyes are on them. And when they don't perform, they're going to get hated on, and I think some of these other programs, like I'll give you an example. Every year, I don't even know where this comes from, but every year Kansas ends up being a top team. They don't have great talent. They don't play well in the tournament. They lose big games in the regular season. Why do we continue to put all this put them on this high pedestal? Why in every preseason ranking are they up high? And it's just these programs have been so good for so long. They've had great talent go through. I mean, Kansas had some great players in the past. Joel Embiid played for Kansas, and he was dominant there. But I just think that UConn hasn't solidified themselves as a team that's going to be one of the best every year, or even if they aren't actually one of the best, are going to be looked at as one of the best. And heading forward, that's 100% going to change. 2 national championships in a row, arguably one of the, I mean, I know some people are saying I wouldn't say it was the hardest run for them in this tournament. They didn't play anybody really of much talent, but winning by so much in all these games, playing as great as they did. Dan Hurley, is a great coach, whether or not you like him and his antics on the sidelines. But this program just hasn't been good enough for long enough consistently to, in my opinion, get that sort of hate. And I think it also goes into the fact of, like, you're right. Storrs, Connecticut is in the middle of nowhere. All there is it's a college place. There's college town, I think is what it's called, or college city or whatever. but there's nothing else there. And Connecticut's not a huge sports place anymore. I mean, the Hartford Whalers are no longer there. I mean, back a long time ago, Connecticut was the place to be for sports in New England. Not really anymore. So, it's interesting, but got to give it to UConn for a great tournament run and a great couple of years.
Yeah.
Let's see what the team looks like next year, though. I'm not sure what.
So interesting. I just saw the preseason rankings for next year. And it's Jim Calhoun, by the way, was the men's coach. I slipped on his name back in the day. UConn could lose their top 6 players if guys graduate or just go pro. We'll see. This preseason ranking had Duke number 1, which is interesting with Cooper Flagg coming in. They also have another top
that makes
guy.
sense with Cooper Flagg.
Yeah. And next, looking at the tournament overall, I give it a B tournament. I mean,
I agree.
There was I can't, maybe I'm wrong, but we had 63 games, and I don't count the first 4. Not a single buzzer beater to win a game at all.
Yeah.
There was a few buzzer beaters for halftime, but no buzzer beat. Maybe to send one to overtime. No buzzer beat. It's just one of those things that we had a few fairly crazy upsets, but no real deep runs by anybody. NC State was probably the best story, but again, as I mentioned at the start of this, at the start of the tournament, that doesn't really excite me that much. If it's an 11 seed, a 12 seed, I want to see a school that's tiny, Fairleigh Dickinson, or one of those Loyola Marymount. I don't want to see NC State. They're in the ACC. Yeah, it's a Cinderella story in one way. They win, 11 games in a row, whatever it was. Or 10 games in a row. But for me, that wasn't like super exciting because it's NC State. They play Duke, they play UNC, they play these teams. It's more likely that a team like that could go on a run versus a team from a small conference. And again, I went to a school from a small conference, and I'm always kind of have those next to my heart. So again, hats off to UConn. They dominated throughout. Didn't make for the most exciting basketball, but they don't care. They won another national championship.
Yeah, and that's the one thing about it to me that it's a little bit disappointing is that I didn't think any of the last 3 games, the 2 Final Four games of the championship, I didn't think any of them were that interesting. And that's not good for college basketball. I mean, they can't change it. Like, UConn's not going to be like, oh, let's let Alabama score a couple more points so we can make it interesting. No, they're not going to do that. They want to win every game by 20. I get that, but not interesting for any fans. The national championship game, UConn had it before halftime, and I didn't watch much at the end of the game because I knew it was over. But yeah,
and the fact they play the Final Four at the stupid football stadiums, it bugs me to no end. It just looks weird with all the coaches and the subs like sitting below the court. It's just such a money grab, and I hate it.
100%. But yeah, so I'll head into my first rundown topic of the week, and this one is a big one, and one that I think is going very, very unnoticed in Maine and across the country. The Maine Celtics are in the NBA G League Finals. They are in the finals, and I will also say they pretty much dominated their way through the first 2 rounds. I mean, they're one-game series. It's a one-game, elimination, so it's not like a big series, but dominated the first couple of rounds, Eastern Conference Finals as well, and are now in the NBA G League Final against, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it. It is I don't even know what they're playing, but, the places in that G League are so weird. It's like, Little Rock, Arkansas. It's just, anyways. But
the Oklahoma City.
Yes, it's their G League team. Yes. Yeah. But it's an interesting time here. You've got the best team in the NBA in the Boston Celtics, and the Maine Celtics were one of the best teams. I think they ended up being like in the total overall rankings, they were like 6 or 5 to end the regular season, and they're in the G League Finals. And it begs the question of, where is this prospect pool for the Boston Celtics? In the past, I think they haven't really had a lot of movement from, what used to be the Maine Red Claws, now the Maine Celtics, but not a lot of movement from the Red Claws up to the Celtics. And now we're starting to see a lot of movement. Luke Cornett was a huge guy in Maine for a long time, moved his way up. Same for Sam Hauser, same situation. And the 2 guys that really come to mind, and I'm assuming you know who I'm going to talk about, is J.D. Davison and Jordan Walsh. Walsh, the pick in last year's draft from Arkansas. 2 guys that have really been showing out in the playoffs and the end of the regular season for the Maine Celtics. And it's just, I guess the question I have for you, the first one at least, because I have a little bit more, is, first off, is the reason why J.D. Davison and Jordan Walsh, why are they in Maine? Because the Celtics are so deep? Or do you think it maybe is because, that they're just not adequate at the adequate level for the NBA? And then is this going to be a year where we maybe see both teams win a championship. Last time this happened was Golden State in 2015 with their G League team as well, where both teams won their respective championships. Was 2015. So give me your thoughts on that, and then I got one more question about the Celtics.
Yeah, so the G League's tough because I think it's pretty cool. It's great that the Maine Celtics are in it. As we're taping this on Tuesday, they have game 1 tonight at home. It's a best of 3, I believe.
Yes, best of 3.
And so, yes, I agree. It's under the radar. But here's the problem. I just don't know. We'd have to look at the stats. How many guys are playing in the G League and eventually becoming stars in the NBA? Now, definitely players in the NBA. The Maine Celtics used to, I haven't been to a game in a couple of years, probably since before COVID, but they used to have like on the wall all the guys who played for them who ended up going pros, whether it's with the Celtics or somebody else. So it definitely was guys going year by year, but I just don't know, certainly, Major League Baseball, their minor league system is important. In hockey, you see it too. Guys will start off in the AHL and go up to the pros. I just don't see, the NBA is so small amount of people. And I just don't know if there's, if you're going down to the G League, you certainly can go to the NBA roster, maybe have a prolonged career. How does it deal with the Celtics? I don't think you realize it doesn't have anything to do with the Celtics. These guys, for years it was James Young and all those other guys that they had drafted, they put down to Portland. Oh, like he's going to come back up, and they never end up playing major minutes for the parent team. So I think it's smart for the NBA to do this. It's a good way to get people connected to more basketball at the NBA level. On the other hand, I don't see it as a huge stepping stone to the NBA. So I don't think it has anything to do with the Celtics run, really. And would these guys be playing on the Celtics at their worst? Maybe. But again, it's one of those things that these guys shine at the G League level. They can get traded. They get signed by their other franchises. So, no, I think it's cool. Great for them. I hope they win. The Expo is a cool place, a cool venue. It's small. The Expo used to be a dump, to be honest, back when, before the Red Claws, I'm going to call them the Red Claws for now, before they were around and they had to upgrade that facility. So I think it's all good. I don't go to many games. It's frankly pretty expensive. Like if you want to do a general admission ticket, it's fine. It's not a horrible seat in the house, but I was like, all right, maybe I can go I can go a courtside seat. But they're like over $100. Some of these courtside seats. So I guess if they sell them, great. It's good to have a nice local professional team right here in Portland. But as far as its impact in the NBA, I think it's minimal, which is why you don't see many people too excited in the Celtics kind of realm, saying like, oh, the Maine Celtics are great, which means in a couple of years the Celtics would be great too. It's not like that. Not like when the Sea Dogs are good and you're like, all right, in 2 years those guys are going to be playing in Fenway. Not the same at the NBA level.
For sure. I agree. And I think that, it's definitely, like you said, with the Sea Dogs, it's definitely different with baseball when you have rosters of that size. I do think Jordan Walsh and J.D. Davison are guys that, similar to Cornette or a Peyton Pritchard, they're guys that, could play some minutes, could get some points, could have careers in the NBA. But it's just interesting to see. And it's so funny because all of a sudden I saw, the Maine Celtics are in the G League Eastern Conference Finals, and I was like, "Holy crap!" And I know it also has to do with playoffs come quicker for the G League. It's also a lot. The playoffs itself are quicker because it's like 1-game series and a 3-game for the finals. But still, it's pretty interesting. And then you kind of hit on it a little bit there. This is the other question: is the Expo an adequate arena for this G League team or any G League team? The reason why I ask this is because I know that they don't usually sell out. But in the end of the regular season and in the playoffs, they've sold out. They've been, as you mentioned, the tickets are going up. It's pretty hard to come by. We're talking, I don't know an exact amount, but is it even 1,000 seats? I don't even think so.
I want to say it. Yeah, I don't know, because I think it might be, because you have the end, they have the courts at the end. I mean, obviously the stands aren't very tall in that building because the building's over 100 some odd years old.
Yeah.
I will say this: is it adequate for it? I mean, I've seen some of the away games, and some of these teams playing like arenas that are bigger than the Cross Insurance Arena. They don't sell out, and that just looks really bad. I think what's cool about the Expo is when you have a big crowd, it's very loud in there, and again, you have a chance to be up close and personal with some mega players in this league. I used to, when they first started, I wrote for a blog, and I got actually some media passes, so I get to sit courtside, and I sat next to I get to sit next to the Celtics like analytics guy before he became famous. I get to sit next to John Paxson from the Bulls, who was there watching their G League team many years ago. So it's kind of cool and I get to interview some of the players. So it's cool to be that close to it as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting arena, but
good luck to them. Hey, maybe again, by this time this broadcast, they would have won or lost game 1. So hopefully they take the win. It's always good to have winners here in Maine.
Yeah, of course.
All right, my second topic here: baseball injuries. So, Major League Baseball, my Atlanta Braves, Spencer Strider looks like he's done for the year. He's going to have to get Tommy John. He'll be out
You're a
for.
Braves fan?
Yeah. So
Hold on.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
So here, when I was a kid, okay, they were owned by Ted Turner, who owned TBS and TNT, and so he would put over 140 Braves games on a year. At the same time, Nesson, or what I don't know if it was Nesson or the one before it, was a pay-per-view channel, and we didn't have it in my house. So the Red Sox would be on like maybe once a week on the weekend. They'd be on like a free channel, but the Braves were on all the time, and they were good. And so I started following them, and I was been a Braves fan. Now I don't, when I was in Boston for college, of course I cheered for the Red Sox because they won the world. They lost to the Yankees in 03, and then they won the World Series in 04. So obviously, I don't dislike the Red Sox. I'll be honest, for probably 10 years, I didn't really follow baseball at all. The combination of the game was super boring and long, and the Braves were awful for a long time. But the last year in Florida, I actually bought the MLB package just because I was like, I can watch the Red Sox when they're out of town and the Braves too. And I ended up watching quite a few games. The pitch clock, I think, has definitely changed for the better. And that's what we're going to talk about here, baseball injuries. So again, Spencer Strider, their ace, their young ace, is going to have second Tommy John surgery. Galito is out. He's going to be out for the Red Sox. The Bieber guy for, I think, Cleveland, their ace, he's going to be out for the year. All these guys are going down, and you see some people on X, and I'll call them a little bit trolly, talking about the pitch clock. And the Tony Clark, the head of the MLBPA, came out and basically said the pitch clock and all these other new rules are causing it. I just disagree. I think, first of all, the reason they needed the pitch clock is because mostly pitchers were killing the game by doing their routines and taking 45 to a minute between pitches. It was unbearable to watch a 3-hour game that was 2-0. Okay, so you're the reason why they had to do this. The hitters as well, but the pitchers were the biggest culprits of it. The reason that this is all happening is because of everyone's throwing high velocity, and it's all about spin rate. The analytics say if you throw harder and you have more of a spin rate on your breaking pitches, you're going to be a more successful pitcher. It's how you get noticed at the high school level. It's how you get noticed at the college level and major leagues. Spencer Strider, great pitcher. He throws like between 96 and 98 miles an hour every single game. Mm-hmm. The arm is just not sustained. It's not sustainable. So you are seeing some people kind of fighting back against that narrative that's a pitch clock, because the data is tough. When you look at 1 year of data for Tommy John surgeries, it's not really indicative of everything. But these guys are trying to throw super high velocity all the time, and it's just not good. And my biggest problem is it trickles down to youth baseball and travel teams. Travel teams are now, what you kind of have to do it because Little League is kind of a joke in a lot of ways where, they don't practice as much. The kids aren't playing as many games in the past, so they're coming to these Little League games and not really even having played much baseball. So you're seeing travel teams and this big debate about how long should they pitch? Should they be pitch counts? Should they not be allowed to throw off-speed pitches before their arm develops? I know when I was in Little League, and this is going back a long time, my coach was like, no one's going to throw breaking pitches until your arm is still developing at that point. So don't mess up your arm. Now a lot of stuff's happened since then, but it still seems to me that I worry about the youth sports, and these high school pitchers are now having Tommy John almost like it's a rite of passage. Well, you're going to come back stronger because they'll put in, they'll fix it in there, but it's just going to keep happening again when you're seeing these major league guys having it for the second time before they're 25. It's just a recipe for disaster. So I don't know. It's not good for the game to have these guys out for long term, especially Tommy John, still a 14-month recovery. I mean, we won't see Spencer Strider maybe to the All-Star break next year, which is not good for the game. He's a great pitcher. But I don't know what else you do. It's disappointing, but the pitchers have to understand. The pitchers and the analytics guys have to come together and say, like, okay, it's just not feasible for a lot of these pitchers to, and here's the thing. They're not even throwing that many innings anymore. I mean, again, back when I was a kid, a 200-inning season was like, means you're a good pitcher. Now no one throws 200 innings. Mm-hmm. It's just because they're throwing too hard. They can't possibly do it. Plus the analytics of going through the order a third time, whatever. I don't know. What are your thoughts on, especially as it trickles down as we look at high school sports? High school guys trying to throw 90, low 90s is absurd. A lot of pitching experts have said you really shouldn't be throwing that hard in high school. You should wait until your arm develops a little bit more.
Yeah, no. So I'm not a huge baseball follower. This year, I'm trying to watch the Red Sox a little more. I'm trying to get it involved, but that take that this is because of the pitching clock is just so wrong on so many levels. I mean, the injury occurrence in baseball has always been an issue. Pitch clock, no pitch clock, whatever they do, it's always been an issue. And you can't blame it on the pitch clock. And I honestly think that the pitch clock has helped in a lot of situations. But no, Tommy John surgery was common before the pitch clock came about.
Mm-hmm.
Pitchers get hurt all the time. The real question we should be asking is looking more big picture, and it's like is almost accepting an injury rate this high. Should we be accepting that injury rate this high, where we're saying like, yeah, no, it's normal for 4 of our pitchers to go down every year with big surgeries and come back and play because that's baseball. That's the biggest issue. But no, it's definitely not the pitching clock. And let's be really honest, the pitching clock has been so much great for baseball. I know at the beginning of the episode, I complained about how long the game was, but no pitch clock. That game could have been 4 hours. It literally could have been 4 hours because they have pitch clocks at Quinnipiac. So just it's such an interesting debate. I think that it's obviously tough to see guys go down. I mean, the one thing I know you didn't mention this, we're not really pitcher, but gotta give a get well and hopefully a speedy recovery to Trevor Story. Such a tough injury and so heartbreaking for him. Had that tough recovery last year, and 7 games into the season is probably gonna be out the rest of the year.
For the year, yeah.
After a great start, also gotta put that out there too. But now injury currents and this type of injuries are weird, and it definitely does tie back to how much, how fast these guys are pitching, and it
just seems to me these arms are taking time bomb. Like I watch these high school guys; they're throwing as hard as they can, every throw. Even if they're hitting mid-80s, I'm like, there's only a matter of time before, if you're just pitching in high school, it doesn't really matter as much. But if you're looking to play in college or somewhere else, it's just hard. And again, I think to answer your question, no, it's not good business to have your top guys. You're trying to pay these guys $20-30 million a year, and if they can't pitch for a year and a half, that's it's not good. And most teams can't absorb that kind of attrition, right? Or just go to these games where you're throwing 5-6 pitchers out there a game. That's not very good for the fan either.
Yeah, for sure. I'll head into my second rundown topic. Going to stick with some basketball talk, and we're going to talk college and the University of South Carolina women's team, who I'm not going to use the word dominated because I think Caitlin Clark and Iowa played a good game, but overall I think they just kind of ran away with it in the national championship. The second one in a row for the University of South Carolina. And wait, that's not true. Is it second in a row?
No, the LSU won last year.
That's right. No, I
was over
like,
Iowa.
I said it, and I was like,
UConn won back to back. Yeah,
that's what it is. But Don Staley, the head coach of this University of South Carolina team, probably one of the best woman coaches of all time. Has had such great success with USC, undefeated season this year with USC, and also has had great success with international play as well. Won a couple of FIBA Cups with the United States women's team. But with Don Staley's success and how South Carolina's been, I guess my kind of question is the University of South Carolina becoming the new 2010s UConn? Whereas, you just look at the team, you look at the coaching, and no matter who's on the roster, you say, this team is going to win. This team is going to be successful. Because I got to be honest with you, looking at this University of South Carolina roster, they've got great players all around. They have an all-around team. That's really why they dominated. But they don't have a Caitlin Clark. They don't have a Paige Beckers. They don't have a Juju Watkins from the other USC, University of Southern California. They don't have, the top 5 players like individual players. The team every year seems to be built as one of the best, and I think that has to do with head coach. So I guess my question is do you see this team as somebody that could go on? We look 10 years down the road, we look back and we say, wow, this USC team dominated for a decade, and I remember how crazy it was when they were playing every year and they just couldn't be beaten.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they certainly could. I don't think they're there yet. Again, for the longest time, it was UConn, and then they had Tennessee. UConn and Tennessee with Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma were the two teams that were always winning. Then UConn went on this run for I don't have the stat. 7 years, they won 5 championships and 4 in these massive undefeated streaks. I don't think South Carolina can do what they did back then. I know it's a little bit different I think it's different because of the transfer portal NIL. What happened with UConn is all the best players would just commit to UConn and go to UConn. Nowadays, you can actually pay to bring a player, to a different school. And I think, with UConn, you had like Duke, who was good for a while, and Notre Dame was good for a while, and these other teams would kind of come and go. And Tennessee eventually has fallen off quite a bit. Candace Parker was there for a while. I mean, they had a lot of great players, but can South Carolina do it? Certainly, they have the infrastructure. Don Staley's a fantastic coach. He was a great player, even better coach now. The thing is, though, there's other good teams, I think, that will challenge them more than UConn. Again, women's basketball is different now. There used to be a time where like all the top. I remember once like I finished like 130th in the women's NCAA online bracket challenge. And no, Kamala Harris has never been brackets before, but there's been brackets for a long time. And honestly, because I literally picked like every single favorite to win every game, and it almost happened like that. And this was like 15 years ago. So that's different now, though. Like, yeah, the top teams are still rising to the top, but you're seeing some more upsets. You're seeing a little bit more balance of play. Maybe I don't think I was going to be nearly as good next year. I think that you could see LSU take a big drop as well, but there'll be other teams that'll pop up. Again, it could happen. If there's any program that could do it, it could be Dawn Staley. The way that she recruits, the way that she kind of leads her team, I think is great. We're not there yet. I think honestly, they would have to win like the next 2 in a row for me to even consider them like what that UConn team was, because those UConn teams were just demolishing people. And again, South Carolina, they had a great run last year. They didn't win it though. They need to win it 2-3 times in a row for me to put them in that conversation. I think UConn men's are a little bit ahead of South Carolina women, but I think South Carolina women have a better chance at making a deeper run than UConn men, because again, like you said, it's going to be tough for UConn to keep this going. They'll lose all 5 of their starters this year probably.
Yeah. For sure. And while we were amidst this conversation, I know I kind of getting off topic here, but I was thinking to myself, did we mention the exit of Mackenzie Holmes? I don't think we did. I just want to take a second to talk about that. Obviously, Indiana was not in the Final Four with the national championship because they got knocked out in the Elite Eight. I believe they got knocked out by USC. Did they end up playing USC?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. We may have talked about it because I think they were leading. I thought we were talking about Maine. My bad. Yeah, you're right.
No, I don't think we. Yeah, but I just wanted to give a shout out to Mackenzie Holmes. Incredible player at Indiana for years. Definitely a staple of when I think about, and when I think most people think about Maine. Women's basketball in Maine, they think about Mackenzie Holmes. I think for years they're going to think about Mackenzie Holmes. I don't know right now if the WNBA is in her future. I think she could make it. I definitely think she could get drafted. And I'm not sure what her plans are, but I know that was her last time playing for Indiana. So I just big congrats to her for a great 4 years at Indiana. And
it's going to be tough to top her accolades for a Maine high school girls player. It's really going to be tough because she basically started almost as a freshman and just played 5 years there and did the state very proud.
Yeah.
Awesome. My third and final topic, staying in college, switching over to the ice, is the Frozen Four preview. Again, the University of Maine had a great run. They're out. We're now to the Frozen Four, which is to take a week off, which I'm not a huge fan of. I understand they don't want to compete, I guess, with the basketball, but still feels like forever ago since they played these games. We have BC versus Michigan. I think BC's going to roll in that game. Michigan upset Michigan State in the regional final. And then we have BU and Denver on the other side. I know we talked a little bit about this last week. You think BU is going to roll? I think they will 100%. Against Denver as well, setting up BU BC. I'll just give my quick prediction. I think it's going to be BU BC. I think BC wins 5-2 or something like that. I just think they're just so good. And we talked a little bit about Quinnipiac last time. I thought they choked a little bit, but I want to get your take on the bleeding of the program. Quinnipiac, lots of guys transferring, lots of guys going pro. I'm still following the Quinnipiac Barstool page or whatever. So I'm seeing all this stuff.
They're hilarious.
It was great watching it as they choked against BC. But what are your thoughts on Quinnipiac hockey? They had a great 2-year run, no question about it. Won a national title. And now it seems like, are you going to go back to kind of mediocrity, or what's the deal there?
All right. So, did you get it all out of your system? Do you have anything else you want to say?
That's it. That's all I have to say about it.
So now that you have done, crapping on my school and the team that I have, by my team, by my guys, I will say, yes, a lot of people are leaving the team, and it makes sense, right? But I wouldn't call it bleeding. I'll give some context. So Quinnipiac, when they won the national championship, was not a favorite to win. They were a good team. They had a great year. They lost the semifinals of the ECAC playoffs. They were an at-large bid. They were not like, they won the ECAC, so they made their way in. No, they were an at-large bid. They had a good team. And the reason why that team was so good was because we look at two different teams in college hockey, and I think this happens in all of college. You've got a team that has been built up for years by a very, very good coach, and these guys have played together for so long, they know that they're just so good. Or you have a team of, I'm not trying to be rude to like Boston University or Boston College, but let's be honest, like guys that stay for 1 or 2 years and then go, get drafted or go to the AHL or whatever, and guys that, it's not really built on that long term. That it's big name. That BU's got big names. BC's got big names. Michigan's got big names, and so going to the national championship, that was a team of guys who it was just so good, played so well together. I mean, Zach Metza on defense, such a great guy. Same on offense as well. They just had such great players, and goaltending was great as well with Yanni Peretz. But it was, when you go to college and you go and you have this team built up, it's going to end. It's going to end. And so Quillen heads to Toronto. Great for him. Sam Lipkin heads to Tucson, the Roadrunners, or the Arizona AHL affiliate. And Colin Graff goes to the San Jose Sharks and plays like 11 days after losing to BC. It was the end of an era. Those three guys were here. I mean, Lipkin was only here, I think, for 2 years, but Quillen and Graff were here for a lot longer. It was an end of an era. And I don't blame other players for seeing pretty much, in my opinion, the three best players leaving and then saying, okay, I want to play somewhere else. Filion, Christophe Tellier, some of these guys are leaving. Some guys opting that for a fifth year. I don't blame them. I do get it. That's what happens to teams. Don't sleep on Quinnipiac. They still have some great players. They're going to have some great guys. Mason Marcellus, the first year, is coming back, and he's going to be one of our best scorers. We've got some big guys coming in from the transfer list. We've got some guy from Holy Cross and a defender from UMass Amherst as well. So we got some great guys coming in, but I wouldn't call it bleeding. It happens, and it happens everywhere. So I'm just saying, if you're going to call it bleeding for every team after every year in every college sport ever. It always happens.
It's a little bit different though, because
so.
Because of exactly what you said, is Quinnipiac is not this perennial powerhouse. And sometimes, I mean, you look in hockey, Union won a national championship in hockey. Teams like St. Cloud State, teams like some of the Minnesota Mankato, these teams kind of blip and then they go away. Minnesota, North Dakota, Michigan State, BU, BC, these teams, yes, they definitely have, dips, but it's tough. It's just, it would make me nervous. If I was a Quinnipiac fan, I'd be like, nervous, being like, all right, where are we going to end up? That's good. That's good for you.
And I'll also add this. We have been to Frozen Fours before. We've won ECAC. We've been to the tournament a lot of times. I get what you mean. BU, BC is definitely a lot more consistently one of the top teams in the country than Quinnipiac. I can 100% agree with you. I just think that we can't look at this as like the team is bleeding because they're gone. This happens. Like we've talked about this whole situation of after Minnesota lost to Quinnipiac in the national championship, guys decommitted from Minnesota to go commit to BU or BC or other places. These teams, when the better players move on or teams have success, or the team falls off and doesn't play as well, guys decommit, guys leave, guys want to try new places, guys want to finish their career closer to home. It happens. And I just think that it happens everywhere else. So let's not I just don't want it to look at this as like, Quinnipiac, this is so crazy that all these guys are leaving. No, we'll
see. We'll see next year. We'll see the records next year. I hope you're right.
For sure.
Just give me your quick fire final Frozen Four prediction.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing as I said last time. BU BC obviously going to happen, but I will say watch that BC Michigan game. That's going to be a great game. If BC plays the same way they did against Quinnipiac, Michigan is a team just like Quinnipiac who's got good scores. They can play great defense when they need to. I think Michigan could cause an upset.
I would love it. Oh, I'd love it. I'd rather. If I don't want to say. I was going to say if BU BC, yeah.
For BU BC is too good to not happen. I understand that BC is a great team, and I know you don't want to play them, and I don't blame you as a BU guy. And I will say I'm rooting for BU too. I'm rooting for BU. But I just think BUBC national championship helps college hockey, helps Northeast hockey, helps Boston hockey. It puts it on. It's good for the sport and good for the city. So I got BUBC. The issue I have with my prediction here is that everything in the regular season tells me BC is going to wipe the floor with BU. But looking at how they played against Quinnipiac, I think not so fast. Anything can happen. I'm going to stay BC. But we'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm gonna watch. Definitely excited to watch.
I don't know if I can watch it weekend. I'll be overseas. I'm gonna have to get up super early or stay up super late to watch it. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah,
I know. We'll see.
All right, I'll finish off the rundown segment with my last topic, and this one is one that I changed last second. I was gonna talk about the Boston Celtics and they're gonna make the playoffs, but I changed it. Don't know if you saw this. A 14-year-old in the WHL named Landon DuPont has now been just granted exceptional status in the WHL. The last player to do this is Connor Bedard. This exceptional status thing, I honestly don't know the exact criteria of it, but it's basically once in a generation players is what this is. And as you know, Connor Bedard's already lining up the NHL, so that's going to be
future 50 goal scorer. You don't have to tell me twice.
Oh gosh, Jeff and I have argued about this in the past, and have.
He's going to be a stud.
I don't know, but anyways.
And when they get the BU guy too, they're going to be the Chicago. They'll win it again somehow. They'll win the lottery.
The BU guy, do you know his name?
Celebrini.
Okay, the pause there for a second. I was worried you were going to forget his name again.
It's been 2 weeks since they played. That's what I'm talking about. They got to keep me fresh in the mind.
But Landon DuPont is granted WHL exceptional status. And honestly, for the amount of points he's put up, I don't know his numbers, but he's close to Bedard. He'll probably be a little bit shy of what Bedard had. Bedard passed Gretzky's numbers, if you didn't know, before he left the WHL. But it brings up this topic with me, and it's not just WHL. And it's honestly not even just hockey juniors, but I just mean everywhere. But I'll stick to WHL. How much stock can we put into juniors hockey? I understand Connor Bedard is a great player. He's probably going to be an all-star. He'll probably be one of the best players. He's been looked at as the next Wayne Gretzky. I don't think he's that far. But still, 160 points in 70 games or 80 games is crazy. 2-3 points a game is crazy. But it's the WHL. It's juniors. These are – and a lot of times the guys that are putting up these points, Landon DuPont's a 14-year-old playing with a lot of 16 and 17-year-olds. But other players who have done this in the past are guys who are 21 who are playing against 18-year-olds. And Bedard and DuPont are the exceptions. So overall, whether it's the WHL, other leagues of juniors, the OHL, whatever, the NAHL, or if it's even other leagues, other sports, how much stock should we as fans put into these crazy performances in junior leagues or, lower levels of basketball? Or how much stock do you think fans should put into stuff like that? And turning that into this guy put up this many points in, whatever, elite, premier team he played for when he was 16 years old. Yeah, he's going to be a 40-point, 40, 50 goal scorer in the NHL, whatever. How much stock should we put into it?
Well, it's different because each sport's a little bit different, right? So in football and basketball and even baseball, it's not an apples to apples comparison because of the size is so important, right? You see guys all the time and you look at some of the state basketball, the guys who scored the most points in some of these states, and they're not LeBron James and other places there because you can be smaller. And same with football. Sometimes you can be small and successful. I think you could take, because I used to look at a lot about these junior leagues when I was at BU, and shortly after I was always looking at the recruiting and everything else and guys who would be coming from the WHL and other leagues like that. I think you can put a little stock in it at the very upper echelons. I think it's where it gets a little dangerous is the mid-level guys or a guy that maybe has one good season that maybe makes you think, I don't know. But these guys, again, you talked about Bedard and this other kid, they're putting up record number of points. Okay, so does that mean the next Wayne Gretzky? No. But when you're looking at recruiting somebody, we're looking at drafting somebody, you're trying to find out not only a guy who will help your team, but what's the least amount of risk as well, right? And we see it all the time in the NFL draft, and sometimes they'll take the safe player. In the NHL, you're looking for somebody, first of all, who's not going to embarrass you, who's not going to be a total waste of a pick. And then if they happen to be not just a good player, but an exceptional player, then that obviously becomes better. But there have been so few guys in the NHL that are come in with this huge touted status. We're talking like the upper guys, Sidney Crosby, obviously Connor Bedard, Ovechkin, guys like this, Evgeny Malkin. Like those guys almost always at least have decent NHL careers. And of course there are exceptions to that. But if you're looking at, how does it should weigh something in, but you do have to look at apples to apples. So for me, it'd be like, all right, this kid's 14 now. What did Connor Bedard and, the other guys who were in that league put up when they were 14? That for me is a little bit more apples to apples versus just saying he was in this league. It doesn't really matter what age he is. He put up this many points because it could have been a down year for defense in that league. I don't know. But look, the size too, when you're 14, the kid's going to grow. Maybe he doesn't, right? Because Bedard's on the smaller side. So I think that's you got to take it with a grain of salt. But to put up that many points, it's hard to say that they're going to be a total bust. I got to say that.
Yeah, I agree. And the biggest point for me about this, like, I think Landon Dupont is a great player, obviously exceptional player, deserves the status, probably going to be a great NHL player in the future. But the thing is like when Bedard, this is what angers me. When Bedard passed Gretzky's record, everyone said, okay, he's the next Gretzky. I think Bedard will be a great player. I will stand by this. Bedard will never, ever, ever be as good as Gretzky. I don't think anyone ever will be as good as Gretzky and what Gretzky was able to do. So that's my thing is it's like, okay, so what even if Dupont puts up 200 points in the WHL for the next 4 years until he's old enough to go to the NHL, even though he passed Gretzky and he passes Bedard, does that really mean they're going to be better? He'll be great, but does that mean he's going to be better? And that's just where I don't know if that's where the stock should go. But it's interesting to see. It's really cool to me that I think Gretzky also got exceptional status in the WHL, but to my knowledge, especially recently, only 2 players have gotten this. It's a pretty cool honor, and the last one to get it was Bedard, and
we'll have a bet on him at some point if he ever makes the NHL. This Dupont kid.
I'm praying no 50 goals for Bedard for the next.
Oh, next year probably.
What was the bet?
4 years, so he's got 3 more years to do it. It's gonna be a sweet. I don't even remember the dollar amount. It was $150. It wasn't cheap. So anyway,
I just don't think. 2 years ago, I didn't think.
You better hope he gets hurt. You better hope he gets hurt every year just for a few games because he's looking pretty good.
All right. That's going to do it for the rundown segment. Let's head right into our interview. This week, we've got a big guest, Chris Sedenka, a radio host of WBLM. He is also the former host of the PM Jab in Maine and the former host of the OG Maine Rundown that Jeff was on. We'll talk a lot about that in this interview, but let's welcome in Chris Sedenka.
All right, now we're joined by our guest for the week. It is Chris Sedenka, who is a WBLM. Do we call you a disc jockey? What do you call yourselves now, Chris?
I am a disc jockey. Yeah, content creator is probably the more official term, but I mean I'm a DJ.
DJ, yeah. Former host of the PM Jab here in Portland, former play-by-play guy for the Maine Celtics, Red Claws at the time. And, of course, probably the most importantly, the former host of the OG Maine Rundown back on WPXC and WPME, which Chris and I, that's how we met. Chris was the host. I was the producer. We had some help from some of our friends, Matt Beach, Sarah Parlin, some other people. Chris lasted about half the run, and then I took over as some of the hosts. We had some good times there. We had a weekly high school sports show. We got 115, I think, original episodes, and that was a fun time, though.
It's crazy to think that there was that many episodes and the number of trips we were making on like random Wednesday nights to like, hey, let's go to
Let's go to Westbrook. We went to Westbrook like all the time. At that point, it's like whatever AD is going to be nice to us, like we would cover them all the time.
Yep.
That's awesome. So we're gonna
got a chance to see a lot of great sports and meet a lot of great kids and coaches. So. And you're kind of learning the business as well, right? Like it was a good way to kind of get your feet wet with video production and editing and packages and what's going to work in that type of environment, and also realize that maybe high school sports wasn't for you.
That's right. It's
not you.
Yeah, it's a grind. It's tough every year. Yeah. So let's first talk about your time at the PM Jab. How did you first get into sports talk radio? I mean, a lot of people want to do that, but how do you actually get into that kind of line of work?
Yeah, so I was, I want to say, I think I was in my sophomore year in college. I'd started as a sports psychiatry or sports psychology major, thinking I was going to be like the sports psychology to the stars, right? And then I realized I was nowhere near smart enough to do that. And so I switched over to English, and I was thinking about teaching English. And I remember one of the big class, I think I was in like Intro to Journalism or Journalism 101. and the sports director at the radio station at college came in and gave a speech about, maybe, coming in and learning some stuff. And so I went in and I just put in an application, did the interview. They loved me and started doing stuff right away. I was on broadcast right away. And at that school, we did play-by-play for a couple different sports, as well as we had a sports 1 hour sports show. And I ended up taking over the 1 hour sports show my last 2 or 3 years on school. And that at that point I had switched over to broadcast journalism as my major, and just spent all of my free time at the college radio station. Ended up traveling with the women's basketball team, called games at Madison Square Garden, called games down in Orlando, outside of Disney. And so, being able to travel with the team, it was this really cool, it was just a really cool experience to be able to do that. And, it was, essentially an internship on campus, if you will. And people ask me all the time, what were you making? $0. That's what I was making. And so, and even before that, my dad got me into sports talk radio when I was a kid. I listened to two things growing up. I listened to BLM, which is funny enough where I am now, and I listened to sports radio, and then CYY as I got a little bit older with rock and roll, and there was always that sports radio aspect. I fell asleep to sports radio, so I used to call sports radio shows. I was never a regular, but I'd call here and there, and it was fun. It was exhilarating, and so when I started doing that in college, I fell in love with it. I spent a summer in Chicago interning at ESPN for a show. That was great. And, lo and behold, came back home for school trying to figure out, where to work. And I had a friend who was kind of connected with the Jab and helped me get an interview. And they had me in like right away, just doing stuff, doing odd jobs, doing morning news at 4 a.m. And ultimately they're looking for, someone to help out on the air from a sports perspective. And I think they saw, that I had good enthusiasm, good talent for it, and ended up doing an afternoon show. They gave me an opportunity to do an afternoon show. Did that for a while by myself. And then obviously Javier Greeny came, and he said, he ended up taking over the show, and then he's still doing it now. He's doing a great job. But yeah, that's essentially how it happened. It was pretty organic, but it was something that I had interest in, but I never really thought I would get into as for a profession.
Right.
Yeah. So you talk about this, the sports radio and how you got into it, but talk about a little bit about, like, in your opinion, what the best part of the job was, and maybe what the worst part or your least favorite part of the job was.
That's a great question, because I think there's different levels of best part. When I was solo, the best part was probably just when it was a super busy show. And it was just call after call, and it was just crazy. And there's only one person to deflect all those calls or to take all that. That was fun. Like, I loved that grind, but it could wear you down. And so, like, those really slow shows is when it absolutely killed you when you're solo. So, 4 hours when you have no producer and, like, small market radio, and you're just sitting there waiting for calls sometimes. You're like, oh my god.
Well, mentioning that though, like what how scary is it for your show? You guys don't have a call screener. I called a few times, and you're on hold and you're on the show. What is it? What is it like? You don't know.
It's not too scary because there's a delay. You have a 10-second delay. So if someone comes on there and decides to go absolutely crazy, we're pressing the button and hanging up. So it's not too bad. It could be a lot worse if you are at the mercy of if you're at the mercy of the callers, you're screwed. Like, you need to have control over them. And it is hard, like you said, Jeff, because we have no call screener. I think we had a caller ID at one point, and you kind of knew, like, if it was a blocked call, you just didn't take it.
Right.
Because plenty of people are calling in, and it was picking up. Like, you'd start recognizing regulars numbers, so you kind of knew who was calling in. And as they say, like, the majority of the calls you're getting a day are regulars. And then, maybe you'll get one or two new ones or one or two infrequent ones. But the majority of the ones people you're talking to are the same people you talk to, because they're the ones who are comfortable. They're the ones who are going to, make it a kind of a part of their day, and appointment listening, if you will. And so that's kind of what you got from that. So it wasn't too bad. There'd be days, you get like the high school kid who's just calling and dropping an F-bomb. Like, I remember the Friday before the Patriots Giants, the first Super Bowl. This kid he was a Giants fan, and this is not because he's a Giants fan. I'm just saying he was a Giants fan, and he just kept calling in and basically being like "F you, Pat," like he did like 20 times, and that's what I mean. Like when you're by yourself, it's harder to kind of deal with that. So
Yeah.
when I was by myself, the best days were just the really fun, like, everyone's rolling on the phone, jokey kind of days. But the best days were just, the days when it was like Javier and I just having an absolutely blast, making ourselves laugh and just inside jokes that might just be killing us or the days where, you're breaking down, like after Super Bowls are great. Like after big games, it's always fun, win or lose. And that was the good thing about when we were lucky. That was a good thing. Like the Boston sports were always relevant when I was on the air. Like never had a downtime. Like it was either the Patriots. I mean, it was always the Patriots, right? The Patriots were always relevant. But the Red Sox had great years. The Celtics had the championship and have been pretty much competitive ever since then. And even the Bruins, like the Bruins have been very good for the most part during that run. So it was pretty. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better situation. It's not like we were doing sports radio in, say, like Minnesota, where like the teams are pretty good, but never winning championships.
Exactly.
And people are nuts up here, and as you know, like New England sports fans are freaking crazy. So it was great. It was easy to get people riled up and calling. And Javier is an anti-New England fan, so that was really fun when we go back and forth. But
it's been a rough 20 years for him on that front.
Yes, it has been. Yeah, it has been. So I mean, it's just the best day of just hanging out with your buddy, like talking sports. I mean, that's really at the end of the day, that's what the job was. Literally to spend 4 hours with a good friend. And we agreed on a lot. We didn't argue a ton, but when we did, they were pretty fun.
Yeah.
So obviously, the PM job is a huge thing in Maine. But my question for you is, did you have aspirations of moving to something maybe more we'll call big time with like WEI or the Sports Hub? Was that ever like on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, especially when I was younger. I loved Chicago when I was there. My brother had lived there at the time, and I really, if I have any regrets, a little bit that I didn't live more in a city, but at the same time, like it was so nice, especially the size of the station at the Jab. Like it wasn't corporate. I was used to college radio. This was legit college radio, and so it was.
I saw the studio. It's total truth.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's I had so much power and so much control over everything. Our bosses listen. They allow you to do different things, and so what happened is those aspirations that I had as younger really just went away because the more you realize that. The work-life balance in Maine is way better than the work-life balance in larger markets. It's pretty special when you can get the jobs here. And so, my wife and I love it here. I met my wife, so that was a big thing when I was young in my career too. And she's got a great career here in Maine. So would I lie and say I didn't think about like larger markets? Sure. But I think the bigger story was like, maybe we could get on to Javier and I could have gotten on to like satellite radio and still kind of worked here, done something national, but able to do it in Maine. I think that was kind of more the aspiration when we were thinking about out of market. And Boston that is not a place I would have wanted to work.
Interesting.
Toxic.
No kidding. Yeah, that kind of leads into my next question. So sports talk radio in general, it changes. Podcasts have now come up where not only broadcasters, but athletes have their own podcasts and people are getting their news directly from podcasts. And obviously you have satellite radio and you'll have the local radio stations, which are struggling. EEI's parent company, Audacity, basically went bankrupt. Even the Sports Hub parent company, even though Sports Hub is a behemoth, their parent company's not doing so hot either. So they're having cuts. Where do you see sports talk radio in 5 years? Do you think a station like the Jab is more poised to stick around long term because, or JJB in general, because of the fact that you said they're small, they don't have this huge overhead. They're not paying their talent. I mean, I wish they would pay them more. They're not paying their talent. Fred Toucher, he's making millions of dollars a year. Like that's a huge number to try to get the advertisers. So 5 years down the road, where do you see, not just here in Boston, because we're crazy for sports in this area, but nationally, where do you see sports talk radio?
Well, it's a great question. I think there's a couple things that go into it. I'll start with national. And I've already heard it. I turned on a national show this weekend, and within 10 seconds, what were they talking about? Prop bets.
Yeah.
That's the future of sports. Mm-hmm. That's the future of sports radio, especially from a national perspective. You're going to have so many, not just prop bets, but so many, sports betting segments wrapped up into whatever sports those are. And it's already happening. I mean, we see it every time you turn around, there's a brand new state that's legalizing gambling, sports betting. And so that, whether I'm not going to argue whether or not it should be a little bit more calm and controlled. I think that one of the, listen, I'm all for sports betting, but the idea of collegiate prop bets is probably not great when all these kids are.
I mean, what's next? I mean, really, why not high school? Why not betting on the gold ball?
Right,
I mean, you know what happens at Pop's Tavern and other places, right?
Exactly.
You know it does.
No, yeah. I'm a little concerned about college kids, especially basketball, because you can, have 5 turnovers by throwing the ball out of bounds a couple times, and we've already started to see stories like that, and that's scary. So that's besides the point. I do think national and regional, like Boston, bigger sports, you're going to hear more and more, and you've already seen it with sports betting. That's going to be a big factor. The other thing is, you're right. Places in states like Maine are still so, and this is not a knock on Maine, I think this is a great thing. They're so far behind from moving forward in like a technological aspect of, say, New York City or Boston or Chicago or LA or, even just like the whole East Coast, right? Like that the middle Atlantic, which is all, moving forward so fast, especially when it comes to, I guarantee that's probably one of the hottest places for podcasts, right? Mm-hmm. And then of course you have all the kids watch YouTube. They watch 30-second clips and they watch, that's what we see. And so even sports viewing on television has changed and shifted so much. But radio is safe. Radio is going to be safe here for a long time. And I think for sports radio, that's great. And I think sports radio here too. I mean, this is a great state when it comes to caring about local sports. High school sports sells very well. I think, when you talk about the Maine Celtics or the Portland Sea Dogs and, with the new USL team that will come and hockey and University of Maine hockey all of a sudden is back, right? Like that could be a really big thing for a while. And, University of Maine's pouring money for their basketball and football program because they see, they see that people care about those sports now. I mean, UMaine sport, when I was a kid, no one cared about UMaine sports other than hockey or women's basketball when it's good. Now, it's appointment viewing for a lot of these different sports and they've got winners going on, which is big. So I think it's, and again, Boston helps. Boston sports being good certainly helps. And, the Patriots story it doesn't matter. The NFL is the NFL, right? That's just a boss now. And the question is how the other sports will go. And Boston cares, right? That's a big factor. And obviously that matters for Maine too. So I think from a local standpoint, they're much safer, especially companies that aren't tied up with, like you said, Audacity or what is that? Beasley, I think that owns
Beasley Media. Yeah, Beasley. Yeah,
Beasley Media. Because you're right. No one has ever seen ratings like Tutcher and Rich had, and they were still taking pay cuts.
Right. And firing producers. And,
right.
Yeah.
10 years ago, those guys are all making like $5 million and making $5 million bonuses. They were putting up 20 share. Like that doesn't happen in normal radio, let alone sports radio. So it's crazy how big
what's interesting too, you mentioned that is you talk about Maine being behind. And I don't want to say this to bash anybody, but I think I texted you before when I'm driving around, I'm like, who is sitting there listening to a Portland Sea Dogs radio broadcast? Like, I love Mike Antonellis, and now they have someone new, obviously. But who is in their car or at their house being like, I wonder if the Sea Dogs are not watching them on TV. Well, I get the radio on. I'm just like, And again, maybe it's because we have an older population. They're going to keep doing that.
I think
And I'm not.
it's a big
It's not
factor
saying
there.
it's a huge overhead, but still, I'm like, who is listening to this?
Well, I mean, I was one of those guys, Jeff. I mean, I called Maine Celtics games, and I always kind of wondered. I would hear from all kinds of people. So, you know what it is? It's just easy listening to throw it on your car when you're driving around, or if you're out in the garage. Like, appointment listening with sports is always been a big factor, and in Maine, it's huge. And I think there's it's just a really good community for it, and it just fits. And yeah, I mean, I worked in nonprofit too, and there are parts of the state. This is 10 years again. It's 10 years ago when I was working, but there were parts of the state that, like, if you ask them for the internet, they would tell you that's hilarious. Or like, we have winners at the BLM. You're like, sometimes you ask for the email, and they're like, "What?" You're like, come on, man.
It's like at AOL.com or at Roadrunner or Lemire.net.
Prodigy or whatever it was called.
I think a great thing, though, to add about that, I know you said, like, who's watching radio broadcasts, and sure, maybe in the past it's not been great, but look to the future right now. The Maine Celtics have a chance to be G League champions. That's going to put them on the map. People are going to want to care about them. And you may not know who this is because I know you probably don't follow the Sea Dogs very much, but, like, Marcelo Mayer is a top prospect.
I remember when he was drafted. Sure.
Yeah. But, so there are things in the future here where some people might want to say, I want to listen to a radio broadcast because I can't make the game because I want to see how Marcelo Mayer is playing because he's could probably end up in Boston in 3-4 years.
I'll say this. I'm always amazed by the number of people who know so much about the minor league system of the Red Sox. I'm fascinated by those people.
Yeah.
I mean, again, they probably look at me and say, like, they're fascinated by my knowledge of West Virginia sports, right? Like, it's my, it's their college, right? So, or whatever it might be. So, I mean, we all have our loves, and up here we're lucky. We're lucky that Portland is supported so much from a minor league standpoint. Like, as a kid, I remember when the Maine Guides left Old Orchard Beach. I mean, and then the Maine Mariners left. There was nothing here until the Pirates came back, and then the Sea Dogs came back, and all of a sudden, this town was going crazy for sports. And the Red Claws / Celtics have been, I mean, that's been a tough ticket every year, right? Like, Sea Dogs sell out all summer long. I mean, it's crazy what they're going to do. And now we got the fourth team coming in with the soccer team. That is going to be interesting to see how that goes. So it's good. And that also helps from a perspective of, you live in a small state, but there is a good level of sport you can still watch.
Mm-hmm. So you even mentioned it right there, but I have heard that you are, as you mentioned, a big West Virginia fan and college fan. I've heard. So I got a little fun question here for you. If you were the leader, the dictator, the controller of college sports, what are 3 things that you would do, add, change, get rid of to college sports? If you want to talk specifically college football, talk college football,
sure.
But just maybe in general to college sports.
Well, I think what you said is right. I would completely take college football outside of the NCAA landscape. Like, I would just, I think it's still, you can call it college, whatever, but essentially it just make it the prospect league to the NFL that it is, right? Just start calling it that. It's perfectly fine for us to call it that and still have it be Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, whoever, right? Like, that's okay. Like, but there's really no reason for it to be in with everything else in the NCAA. I mean, hell, men's and women's basketball probably shouldn't be either, but we'll just talk about football because we are talking about just ridiculous sums of money. I mean, kids were getting 6-figure NIL deals the first year of NIL when everyone thought, like, kids would be getting like $2,500 checks to, like, stand in front of a car dealership. I mean, this thing became pro overnight, even though it was before, just no one talked about it. But make that, I think, any talk of a major conference or whatever, the super conference, I love all that talk. I love the idea of a tiered system. Probably heard everyone talk about promotion relegation, which sure, but those are 2 words that every college president will be scared to death of because of the revenue share. So good luck trying to figure out a revenue share for all of these schools, but just take the top 20 and the next 20 down and then the next 20 down and just play games. Realize that The top 80 schools are still going to be on TV every single week. Doesn't matter what division they're in. And you can have championships at the end. So, like, I mean, I wouldn't put WVU in the top tier to start with, but if they're on that second one down and WVU beats, like Washington State or whatever, to win that bracket, they move up to the top bracket. Like, and the loser moves down. Like, it would be awesome. Like, that is exactly what everyone should be looking for. But the problem is there's just so much money in it now. And I think and we've seen it. The worst thing that's happened, I don't even care about the transfer portal. I don't care about NIL. I am a massive capitalist. So I love all this kind of stuff for everyone. I hate conference realignment. That is really what, and again, it's driven by money, obviously. I'm not trying to say it's not. But like when I was in school, we played Pitt every year. We played Virginia Tech every year. We played Miami, BC. Like that old school Big East was awesome. It was great. I love playing in the Big 12, but I have no hate towards any of those teams other than like if I just hated them in general. Like I hated Texas because, well, it's just Texas, right? They're always good and they're annoying and they always get offended by horns down, which is hilarious. But like, it's like when we play Iowa State, I'm like, cool. I like Iowa State. They're fun. That's a fun school. Like, I hope we beat them. But like, it's not like we have a chant that I can't say on this about like what we say to Pitt every week. Like that's and it's happened everywhere, and it's going to happen again. I mean, Florida State's and Clemson are going to be in the Big 10 within like 2 or 3 years probably, and half the ACC might end up in the Big 12. So. That's why I say, you know what, screw that stuff. Just start the major league or whatever, the Super League, and splay it out like English league football, which is easily the best set up league in the world. So because even Maine would be in there, right? Like you still have Maine, like and so it would just be fun, and everyone could win championships at different levels, and that would. I think you're not going to lose fan attendance. You're not going to lose money. You're not going to lose the sports betting angle of it. You're probably going to even have more sports betting involved. So that's what I would do with college. That's just college football, right? I mean, the NCAA is, I think, is perfectly fine for the Olympic sports. Whatever, that's what it's there for. And I'm glad that those kids are making money off NIL too. But college basketball, some of the bigger, college baseball would be interesting to see too. Like those are other sports that you probably have to look at. Not right away like college football. Like down the road, will probably continue to outgrow the NCAA.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move on a little bit toward your next step in your career, moving over to WBLM. For those. It's the iconic station, I think, for any type of radio in Maine. So when that first job first came open, what made you want to make the leap from sports talk radio to there? And then just in general, what is it like being at WBLM? Like for my question's always like, how do you keep it fresh with music that everybody knows and everybody's heard for years?
Yeah, it's a great question. Excuse me. I think for me, I mean, I'd be lying if COVID didn't have a role in it. Sports talk radio during COVID was, playing video baseball and simulating the Red Sox season and making fun of like the bubble and the fact that the Lakers won a fake championship, right? Like that was COVID sports talk.
Right. Yeah, no, not great.
For a long, long time. So, I think I was a little maxed out. But at the same time, I'd always kind of wondered about what music radio would be because growing up I was in bands, I was a singer, I loved rock and roll. Before I went to college, was in a band for 2 years, trying to kind of make it, and just having a good time, and just figuring out life, right? So loved rock, loved BLM growing up. My mom got me into classic rock when I was a kid. I'm an idiot that I didn't have her save her vinyl collection. Still stopping myself about that, but
oh boy,
still have plenty of it. But yeah, I mean, I was just kind of looking through the job postings one day, and I saw that there was an opening, and I knew that they had just lost a couple of their most iconic guys. But they had, the captain has been there since the early '80s. He's still there. Celeste, his co-host, has been there for a couple decades now, probably, or at least. And then they had an afternoon guy and a midday guy who had been there for decades, and both of them kind of left around the same time. So BLM was missing some people, and I just applied, and I didn't think much of it, but I knew I would regret not doing it just because it's such an iconic job. And I got I got a call maybe like a month later, something like that. So I'd not forgotten about it because I was like, I can't believe they called. Like, don't they know who I am?
Right.
It was like the most conceited I ever got in my life. Like, how dare they? And then they called, and they were super interested. They couldn't believe I was in, like, it was just kind of like a perfect, like, mutual interest type of thing. And it was an easy yes. It really was. It was hard to leave Javier. But I was kind of done with sports radio, and I've nothing to look back other than great fond memories of it. But I look at it as like I had like 12, 15 years to do sports radio. Now I'll have a couple decades maybe to do music radio. And so did a little bit of DJing in college, not much. So very, very green going in. But it was cool kind of learning about, like what you said, Jeff, how do you keep it fresh? Well, you do segments, like we'll do 2 for Tuesdays. And a lot of the times you do 2 for Tuesdays, you'll play, one of the songs that's usually in like the normal rotation. And maybe you'll play a song from that band that is a little bit more of a B-side, or you don't hear it as often. We have everyday classic lunch as a theme, so that you'll hear a bunch of stuff that's fresh. I have a couple of different segments, including a live segment that I do every night. So you're mixing it up a little bit, but also, it's so funny. Like I always wonder, like, when I'm going to get tired of hearing songs, but I'll hear these songs. I'll still sing them all the time.
You still want Stairway to Heaven every week, and AC/DC, and yeah.
Typically, the rotation is like a song like Hotel California. If it plays on my show on Monday, it probably won't play on my show for the rest of the week or something like that. It might play at a different time during the day, but that's kind of how that works too. Like a little bit.
Now, did they give you like a quiz, like when you interviewed for the job? Where they like, do you like, who is this guy? And they held up like the doors.
Not really. I mean, Herb kind of knew. I mean, we know each other a little bit. He knew kind of my background, and I even wrote like the most informal cover letter, because I was just like, man, I was basically like, I'm ready to rock,
Classic. No, I think it's genius about BLM's business model is the production cost must be nil, because you have the same bumps as you did when I was 15 years old. Yeah. The same exact WBL, and they're still amazing. I wouldn't change them either. But it's the same, like 4 or 5 different things, Maine's rock and roll station. It's just funny.
When I do remotes, I mean, people will just come up, it's the blimp, it's the blimp.
It's a blimp, man, it's a blimp.
It's literally the same stuff since basically 1973, but that's what people love, like you said. Yeah. I mean, it's a true Maine station. It started in Litchfield, moved to Auburn, now it's in Portland, and it's it started 51 years ago, so all these cats who are in high school or younger back in 1973 are all at that age where they're a perfect prime demo now, and they've been listening for 50 years, and their kids have started to listen to it, which is cool too. So, but no, I did meet with our like music director person for the company, and he was just he wasn't like quizzing me, but he was just kind of talking about like what I like for music, blah blah blah, and so I must have impressed him quite a bit.
That's really good. So speaking of staying relevant, though, recently you do have some guests in. You had Kirk Minahan, obviously, who was here for a show, and he came into the Blimp for a while. How did that come about, and what was it like? We see Kirk Minahan. I don't listen to his show that much, but I like some of the stuff he does on Barstool. I have some friends of mine who are Mina fans.
Sure.
But what is it like having a guy like that in your, in the studio? And what's he like, when he's not kind of playing his little character on his podcast?
Yeah, he was a super nice guy. So that came about on his show. He's a huge classic rock guy, especially he's a big Bruce Springsteen fan, loves Petty, loves Seeger, and there's some 3 of the biggest people that we have on our show. But a lot of times on his show, he'll try to do something what's called hit the post, which is you essentially talk up to the first verse of a song, or you talk up to maybe when like there's a bridge or an important music part or a solo kind of at the beginning of the song. So
I do that too in the car all the time.
yeah,
all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I did it for I did it for years. I'm terrible at it, but so I just last year when they were coming to Maine, I sent him a message saying like, "Hey man, I don't know if you guys are interested, but you're more than welcome to come in and hit the post." And he was thinking about it a year, but yeah, it kind of fell apart. It actually worked out because I ended up having COVID that week. So
Oh, jeez.
that would not happen.
That would have been bad.
Yeah, so I just sent a message again, maybe 3-4 months ago, be like, "Hey, listen, offer still stands for this year, blah blah blah." And he was like, "Yeah, I would love to do that." And so, kind of just set it up. Came in, told my boss like the day before he was coming, like, "Hey, guess what? This dude's coming in." And of course, I mean, it's rock and roll, so no one cares.
Yeah, right.
Had a good time. And so, yeah, he came in and just set up the show where, talked a little bit about his live show that he was doing, but it was mostly, just kind of setting up songs and him talking music. And it was cool. Talked a lot of shop off the air about the music industry and the radio biz, especially in Maine. And he's a huge fan of our state.
He loves the Saco Drive-In. He's been there. He went there during COVID. He's been there many times.
He's done shows in Madawaska.
Oh yeah,
super weird. It is super weird, but no, he was very different off the air. Very normal. So,
interesting.
Very, very, it was very nice. I couldn't have asked for him to be a nicer guy. So no, it was good. It was a lot of fun, and hoping to get him back in because he's pretty good at it. And it did very well. Like we got a lot of great feedback from it. So
sweet,
it was pretty cool. But yeah, I'm always. I mean, if there's those kind of New England connections that where people know about, it's always fun to kind of mix it up, like you said, to do some fun segments, keep it fresh. Talked a lot of Maine Celtics this week on the show. So yeah, I mean, it's important to keep it going.
Nice.
When you in an age right now where satellite radio, no ads, where you talked about it, the technology in other places is advancing. How does WBLM stay relevant? May not be the best way, but like stay fresh. How do they keep up with a level of you're keeping with some of the traditions of WBLM in the past, but also making it fresh and new so that you're kind of integrating different types of listeners?
And new music too, right? Because you're not just playing AC/DC anymore. You're playing more stuff in the 90s.
Correct. Yeah, no, it's a great question. A lot of it has to do with your community. And especially here in Maine. And Maine is a community-driven state, and so a lot of ours is driven towards work sites. We do a lot of workplace shout outs. We just did a bunch of giveaways for workplace radios, right? So, we try to cater to our demo as much as possible. The guys and gals who are going to be driving around all day long, want to make sure it stays fresh. You want to make sure you're doing those segments so they're not hearing the songs over and over. Because, we're still for-profit radio, right? Like we have to sell those ads. We have to play. It's how we all get paid, and so it's going to be there. And so we need to make sure that we're doing things or we're keeping it fresh where people aren't going to touch that dial even when that commercial break comes up. And so we're lucky that we're in Maine and and honestly, I mean, satellite radio, it's there, but it never really became a major player there. I think podcasts maybe a little bit more, but even and I'm hands up, I listen to podcasts all the time. I love them. I think it's a great medium. I think it's a great medium for radio too. I think we can take advantage of it as well, and so I think that's a really good place, and it just gets people listening even more. And I even saw that I think podcast listening is going down. I mean, everything's changing because everything is now YouTube and TikTok, right? Like, it's insane how much is driven. And listen, have I scrolled for 2 hours on Instagram? Absolutely. And I'm 43 years old. So clearly it's an addiction for all of us. But, but again, I think we're lucky that we still live in a state that really values, that community base and we're given local news and we'll have, Tom Caron on weekly to talk about Boston sports. It's just the little things that you can do to make sure that people understand that like you are about this community. And it also helps that it's legacy driven. I mean, this is a radio station that's been around for 50 plus years. We're on the third generation of families, right? Like that are still listening. And I'm blown away about the number of young people, and I used to say this about sports radio too. I was always blown away by the number of young people who listen to sports radio. I'm blown away by the number of young people who listen to classic rock. And to your point, Jeff, now Nirvana's in, now Pearl Jam is in, now it's Green Day. So we have to get those young guys because that's going to be the core audience here as we all get older. And Foo Fighters, that's a big one too. Like the music is changing, but you still, but Rolling Stones, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, they're not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, and I'll just give a quick anecdote before I ask my final question here, and that's about satellite radios. I have Sirius XM. I've had it for years. I used to have it for Howard, and then he's boring now.
Oh, I had it too. Yeah,
I still have it, and I think specifically classic rock is really poorly done on Sirius XM. I think for pop, for everything else, there's a lot of great stations. The 70s station, 80s, 90s. They have a ton of pop rocks. Is like my favorite one. But they don't really have like a BLM type. They have like classic rewind and classic vinyl, which are different. They have very specific tastes, like the Fish Channel. And for me, I don't love it. Like I would rather listen to BLM. Like I'm not going to listen to WJBQ. I'm just not going to do it because I don't want to listen to the ads. I don't want to listen to the banter. Like I'm just not. And that's just not JBQ. It's all the GMX, all those. I don't want to hear the banter. I want to hear the music. BLM, you guys have such a great like balance of all the rock that I've liked to listen to, but also you don't do a lot of that kind of pandering crap. Like I just want to listen to music, give me a little bump, give me some info, and let me go on. And I think satellite radio has done a very poor job of capturing that classic rock market.
I would agree. That's a really good point. I think the direction that satellite went in is, like you said, they wanted it to be more like Spotify, where they have these radio stations, or Pandora, if you will, because I think Pandora actually does it better than Spotify, where you just have radio like. I love Bruce Springsteen. I'm going to listen to E Street Radio. I love the Grateful Dead. I'm going to listen,
Yeah.
And they should just combine classic vinyl and classic rewind.
Exactly.
Because
yes.
it hurts both of those stations both those channels that they split it because, well, I want to hear Zeppelin, but I also want to hear Styx. Like I want to hear them together. Right. And that's, you're right. That's the beauty of classic rock. And, we're happy to be those people.
Yeah. So my final
it's fine with me that satellite radio is still doing that. But,
absolutely. Yeah. So my final question. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
And I should say this too, because I haven't mentioned it. Like we drive and our biggest numbers are going to start coming from the app and are going to start coming. The more and more people are listening and streaming radio, not just our radio, but just radio in general overall. And I think that might actually hurt Sirius because it's all free. You're not paying for it. I mean, you are hearing some ads, but even like Sirius, the sports, you're still getting ads with sports. You're still getting ads with the talk shows. So it's not like it's all just free. So
yeah, and what frustrates me too, especially with like some of their pop stations, is their DJs will talk a lot. And like for a 5-7 minute segment, I'm like, I bought Sirius to not listen to people talk, right? So I'm gonna ask you one more.
Old MTV VJs.
Exactly. Yeah, Downtown Lisa Brown on 90s on 9. So my final question. It's been a great conversation. Then Zach will have one as the final one too. So this is kind of similar to you being the czar of college sports. This is something I think about. I'm not as big of a music guy as you, obviously. I think about who would I want to see in their prime if I could go back in time. Would I want to see the Beatles in 1964? I want to see Elvis whenever. When I want to go to the Woodstock. So for you, 3 bands or artists that you would be able to transport yourself and see them in concert in their prime. Who would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stick with it in classic rock. I'm not going to be like I want to go see like Mozart, man.
Yeah, true. We'll go beyond that. That would be kind of cool.
I would have loved Dark Side of the Moon tour, Pink Floyd. That's hands down. Seeing that live with the original lineup would be amazing. That's an easy one. I think who would be 2? That's a great question. Oh gosh, put me on the spot here. What else would I want to see? I think probably. I mean, I will be nerdy and say I'll be that guy and say Woodstock, the original, to be able to be there and experience that. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Beatles fan, so I'm not going to say a Beatles one, but yeah, I mean, if I was thrown into like a Beatles situation, that would be amazing. Live Aid, would be incredible to be at, like seeing what Queen was able to do.
Oh my gosh. I watch that like maybe once every other month, that 25 minutes, like the
beyond
greatest 20
incredible.
minutes in the history of live performances. And and obviously I saw the movie and that really got me thinking like, what is this all about? And I watched it. And I'm like knowing the backstory, what was going on with Freddie Mercury, but like that moment in front of 100,000 people, I just can't even imagine what that was like to be there.
I think seeing Queen in their prime would have been amazing. I think the 1984 Van Halen tour, just because that's my favorite band. I like Van Halen a lot, but I think 1984 is on like another level of music. It's so good, and so I think seeing them in tour would be great too.
So I'll just throw in a random one too, and I'm not even a big fan of them, but I go down the YouTube rabbit hole. We had a friend of ours, Tony Giordano, on a few weeks ago. He has a podcast about alternative rock. Like seeing someone like the Doors and seeing them all zonked out in their, like that would have been a surreal experience to see them on the shows, or Jim Morrison just kind of like staring off into space. He's so talented.
I would have loved to have seen them playing like a coffee house in California, like before they were big, or like Aerosmith playing at like the Club Paradise, like down the bar, right?
Yeah,
like that happened.
Amazing.
People saw that. Like that blows my mind. A number of times I've been to Paradise, like thinking that Aerosmith used to play there. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome.
See, you know what's wild is that like if you had to ask me that question, the one I could only give you one, and I would say I'd like to see Jimmy Buffett at Fenway. That would be my one I'd give you.
Be a good show.
I'm not a big fan of the Fenway. I went there once and saw Paul McCartney there a couple of years ago. I mean, he was amazing for how old he is and whatever. Boy, what a crappy concert venue though. Unless you're really close, it wasn't for me.
There last year, I never need to see another show at Fenway.
No, good money for the John Henry though.
We'll be seeing Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins there later this year.
Oh, there we go.
All right, I'll finish up with my last question. That's another quick, fun one. Real quick, who do you think is going to be the next coach of Kentucky?
Ooh, I haven't looked. I assume they haven't announced anything yet.
They haven't, no.
I know Hurley. I didn't think Hurley would go. He's such a Northeast guy. He's perfect.
Yeah.
He should stay at UConn for the next 30 years. I think it might be Billy Donovan if they can get him out of Chicago. I don't know if he's said no yet. That was really when I heard that name, and I was thinking Nate Oates, but it sounds like he already said no. It sounds like he's staying at Alabama. So, yeah, I think Billy Donovan might be the favorite there.
There's not a whole lot of good candidates out there,
Not.
But does Donovan want to come back? I saw the story about them. Like, first of all, Chicago's a dumpster fire, like that organization. But like, does he want to come back to trying to chase around 18-year-old kids to get to come for a year and have to pay them? It's a different. I mean, it's why you see Jay Wright, guys like that going out. So it's a great job opening. I thought Nate Oates would have been perfect for it. So he must have been.
I'm stunned he didn't take that job.
Must have been the big bag from Alabama to stay.
We're going to hear about a nice contract extension soon at that job.
Yeah,
I think it's probably going to be Billy Donovan. My favorite thing from that, this is how crazy, and it goes back to conference realignment. This all happened because SMU went to the ACC. Because SMU went out and got Enfield. Enfield gets USC gets Muschamp. Calipari goes to Arkansas, all because SMU going to the ACC.
It's going to be wacky. This football, again, I agree with the conference realignment. This football season, when you see like UCLA playing like Rutgers, like I'm just going to be like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we? And I'm not, for football, whatever, but like the other sports, I'm thinking like softball and other, like, they're going to have to try. It's going to be a nightmare.
Well, and then, Jeff, it goes back to that point. Like, I never understood, why don't these schools just make their own football conferences and keep the rest of those sports in those old conferences?
Yeah.
It's so mind numbing to me. I don't know. Like, I feel like they could make way more money if they just thought wiser. But you know what? I can't complain. I'm very excited about the playoff situation this year. That's going to be fun.
As a Florida State fan, I'm very excited. There's going to be more than 4 teams in that's for sure. All right, Chris, as we let you go, I just thought of this question just now. You've seen a lot of live games. What is the best athletic moment of your career? And don't forget that time that guy at the Maine Red Claws hit a 3-pointer in loafers and a sweater and tight jeans for $1,000. I'm just going to say,
I did watch Jeff hit a 3-pointer for $1,000. That was awesome, and he got mauled by the Red Claw.
The Crusher. I was like, dude, get off me! I can't carry you. You guy weighed a ton. I don't know how it didn't go down there.
That was great. The best thing I ever saw.
Whether you're broadcasting or just seeing like in person to actually watch a game.
Yeah, it was probably the Sugar Bowl in 2006, and it was typically it's in New Orleans. They had to move it because of Katrina, so it was in Atlanta. We went down. We were playing Georgia, huge underdog. We went up 28-0 in the first quarter and almost lost the game. But the way we clinched it is we faked a punt with like a minute to go, and they didn't have any timeouts left, and we got the first one. It was
clutch.
So epic. Yeah,
clutch.
There's no better way to win a game.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, Chris, we really appreciate your experience. We're listening to you on WBLM all the time, and Zach is a aspiring sports media guy, so I'm sure you'll see him down the road, and we'll catch you back up with you once West Virginia makes a deep run. Hopefully, Bob Huggins isn't there anymore, but maybe you'll get some more deep runs in the future.
I like our new coach. Did a great job at Drake. I'm very excited about that. But thanks, guys. Anytime, really appreciate it. And best of luck.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Chris.
We want to thank Chris Sedenka very much for coming in for that interview. Great interview as always, and great to talk to him. Super great interview as always. To finish up this episode, we're going to talk about the take that has nothing to do with sports, the same way we always finish it. Looking at what we got here in the notes, I think we got two good ones this week. Jeff, take us away with your take that doesn't have anything to do with sports.
Well, on Monday, we got gripped by eclipse fever here in Maine. People flew in from all over the country, drove down from Connecticut, Massachusetts. I saw tons of traffic over the weekend. It happened yesterday. Here in southern Maine, in Saco, we were not in the path of totality, but we were 96% covered. So I set up time-lapse cameras all over our campus. I flew our drone that we have, and it was meh. Mm-hmm. I was so disappointed. And look, I'm not even disappointed at anybody, because it's not like someone told me like it's going to be great. They just, it was hyped up. And look, if you were in the area of totality or the path of totality, like I saw some of the videos and pictures look pretty cool. I can't say I would have driven 6 or 7 hours to go see it myself, but it didn't get dark like at all. It basically it felt like you were wearing sunglasses, but you weren't wearing sunglasses. Mm-hmm. And a little bit of a tint of, yellowish in the and of course, if you look through the glasses and you saw the actual like thing, and it's kind of cool. For me, so I literally deleted the footage this morning. I looked at my time lapse, and it looks just like the afternoon, like a late afternoon day. So I deleted it all in protest. And I would say this: if this is something that would happen every year, when it came around next year, I would have been like, I wouldn't even go outside. Like,
me neither.
Whatever. The biggest thing I noticed was the temperature. It definitely got like a solid 5 degrees cooler during that little time period. But it's just like for people to be like, well, don't drive on the roads. People are going to be gawking at the sun, or animals are going to be acting funny for a little bit. Maybe in the area, but look, even in the area totality, it looked like it was pretty much like it was here in Saco. And then for that 4 minutes, it went almost like to total black. So yes, is it fascinating that only 4% of the sun can basically light everything? Yes, that is pretty. That's pretty cool and amazing. But it was, it was pretty overhyped in my opinion. And I think no one else should talk about it again. We should be done talking about this for the next 25 years until the next one's in the US. I'm not saying it was stupid. Because again, the totality of those videos look cool. I think it would have been cool, if that had that here. But otherwise, totally overrated. Don't at me again about it. We're done with it. Let's move on with life.
Yeah, 100% agree. Same thing in Connecticut. I had somebody tell me I was doing homework when it was happening, and I never plan on going outside to look at it. And I had someone say, "Hey, come hang out with us." Because I think almost pretty much like 70% of campus went outside to like the quad and watched it. I ended up going at the end, but originally they were texting me like, "Hey, come hang out with us, just watch it real quick." And I was like, "No, I'm doing homework." And they were like, "What are you talking about? You're never good. This is like a once in a lifetime opportunity." I said, "Hold on. This is supposed to happen again in 30 years. Like that's what I heard online. This is not a once in a lifetime. And second off, it's not that cool." And was I right? I was 100% right. It was a little circle on top of another circle through glasses. You look at it for 5 seconds, you go, "Oh, that's okay. Wow." And then you walk away. It wasn't crazy enough. And you're right. If you were in that spot where for 4 minutes, the whole, everything around you went dark.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
But not anything that I wasted 30 minutes like at the end just staying there. I ended up just talking to my friends. Like I wasn't even focused at the end when we just like sat outside and watched it. Just so
this was a nice day. It was a nice day, so it was cool. But I think overall Thanks, Eclipse. Slow news day, and now we're off it. Now we're going on to other things.
100%. My take of the week is a little random, but I just wanted to say this because I realized this. I was never a huge steak guy when I was a
No,
kid.
your guy gets like veggie Amato subs. I can't believe you brought this topic up.
Yeah, no. I was a big sandwich guy, big salad guy, big chicken guy. Never really a hamburger guy, but big chicken guy, and seafood as well. Huge seafood guy. But recently, as I've gotten older, I've started eating more steak. I go out to, I get steak when I go out to places that have steak. And I have realized I've tried different types of steaks, on the bone, not on the bone. The best type of steak, and assuming that everything is cooked to the way that you like it, whether or not you like it medium, medium well, medium rare, whatever you like it, the best steak is filet mignon. It is the best steak. It is the best cut. I think it tastes the best. I don't think it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to look fancy. It has to just taste good. And I don't know if maybe I've just gotten lucky that mine have tasted really good the places I've gone to. But filet mignon is the best cut of steak. I don't want to hear anything otherwise. But please give me your take on what you think the best is.
So I don't know. Maybe this will surprise you. I'm not a big steak guy either. I've never really been a big steak guy. I love hamburgers, but it's like I don't. When I go to, I don't. How many steaks do I have a year? I don't know, 3, 4. I don't know. I just never. And so that's why my answer is going to be different than filet mignon, but it has nothing to do with the quality of filet mignon. I don't disagree. It's a great cut. For me, I don't like the really thick steaks. So for me, my favorite, when you say what's is best, I'll agree. Filet mignon's the best. What's my favorite? I'm going to like skirt steak, flank steak. I want a nice thin steak that has like chimichurri or béarnaise on it. Yes, if I was going to a fancy place. Here's one thing that's interesting, and I can't say I haven't tried it. These cowboy chop nows, right? These huge things. I've heard that they aren't as good as people say. Now, it looks cool, right? And the whole thing, they come on the bone. They drop the little, the little salt thing. But from what I've heard, they're a little bit overrated. They're not the best cuts of meat. It's just more of the show. And they're ridiculously expensive because you're paying by the pound, and they have this massive bone in there that's probably weighs like 5 pounds. So, yes, the filet mignon, I guess, would always kind of scared me away from it was, first of all, it was expensive, but it was small, right? And so you see these big T-bone steaks, these huge things on the plate. The filet mignon's small, it is thick, but you're, again, with the price. So yeah, I would say, look, I've had the best filet mignon I ever had was in Vegas. I went to Gordon Ramsay's, one of Gordon Ramsay's restaurants, and they had beef Wellington, which is filet mignon inside, and because I had it was in a puff pastry, it tasted fantastic. Look, I've had a $5 steak at Mulligan's, and I've gone to a steakhouse in South Carolina and had an $80 steak. I didn't notice much difference. Honestly, I didn't. It's the same with me with red wine. I've had really cheap red wine. I've had super expensive red wine. Can't tell the difference. So I'm not going to die on a hill for steak. It's good once in a while. Give me a burger 10 times before you give me a steak, personally.
Oh, that's a fair take.
Yeah.
All right, well, that is going to do it for the take that has nothing to do with sports, but that's not going to do it for the episode. Today, Jeff and I are previewing, maybe let's even say trying out a new segment, because obviously here at the Maine Rundown and in life, you got to spice things up. You got to try new things. You got to add new and be creative. So Jeff and I are going to introduce a new segment that's just some trivia. Jeff and I are going to ask each other one question a week. Anything about trivia. It could be professional, could be college, could be anything. Just I would say 99 out of 100 times is probably going to be sports trivia. Might be some general trivia, but sports trivia. And we're going to see how this goes, and then if it how we'll keep a count of how good we are on our success rate for these trivia questions. So, Jeff, ask away your trivia question. I got a good one for you too.
All right, so mine, I'm going to try to have my trivia questions have to do with one of the rundown topics we talked about. So my question's pretty simple to you. Who was the first coach of the Maine Celtics? The first ever coach of the Maine Celtics, who were obviously the Maine Red Claws. Who was the first coach?
So you're talking about like the first coach of the Maine Red Claws?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Right.
Who's the first coach of the
I was
Maine
going
Red
to say,
Claws?
there's only ever been one coach of the Celtics, and
right.
I don't know his name, but I know of him.
Yeah.
The first ever coach of the Maine Red Claws. Can you give me a date on when they started?
I want to say it's probably 2015-ish. I can't.
Okay. So I think this is a trick question. I think I'm going to say this, and this might come off as horrible. I'm going to say Brad Stevens. Final answer.
Okay. Incorrect. Not a bad guess.
Thank you.
They
Thank
debuted
you.
in 2009, 2010, so it was a little
Okay.
early. The answer is Austin Ainge, who was the son of Danny Ainge, who was at the time was the GM of the Celtics. And Austin went on to, I think he worked for the Celtics organization for a while. He coached for maybe 3-4 years, then went to the front office there, and I don't know where he is now. But yeah, Austin Ainge. And I just brought that up because, again, I covered the team back then. I got to interview him. He was young. He was like 27, 28 years old when he became the coach of the Maine Red Claws. So a little trivia question there.
All right,
let's hear yours. Let's go. I'm feeling
so
smart today.
This one is not on our rundown list, but I think I'll do the same thing as you. I'll try to keep it towards the rundown list and something that's related. I want you to give me in 2000. All right, I'm doing Patriots because you're a big Patriots fan. I want to see how big of a Patriots fan you are. In 2000, Tom Brady was 4th in the depth chart of QBs. Can you name me who was 1 on the depth chart, who was 2, and who was number 3? I'll give you the win if you can name 2 out of 3, because one of these guys I've never heard of, and I know some stuff about football. So
number 1, Drew Bledsoe. Number
Correct.
2, Scott Zolak. Number 3, Tom Tupa. Number 4, Tom Brady. Is that right?
For Tupa.
No, Tupa was the punter in the late 90s, and he was also like a 3rd string quarterback. But it's not Michael Bishop, is it? Michael Bishop
is the 3rd string
from Kansas State. He was just a guy who would just throw a deep ball. There was a game where I want to say it's like 98, 99. I don't know. Sometime around there, the Patriots looked like they had lost the game, and they actually called the players back because they had a clock adjustment. This is before replay. Anyway, so the Patriots had the ball like their own 45, and Bledsoe couldn't throw it that far or whatever. So they brought on Michael Bishop to throw a Hail Mary with like nobody in the stadium and ended up falling incomplete. But yeah, Michael Bishop. There we go. It's good. That's a great question. Great question.
And yeah, I know. Right? I asked it.
Not bad.
So I'll give you it because you got Michael Bishop. But do you have any guess on who number 2 was?
I guess Scott Zolak. No.
Number 17.
Hold on. Let me think.
Number 17.
I don't think I don't have a guess.
I think it's. This is how I think you pronounce it. John Fries.
Spell it.
Friesz. Fries. I don't even know. One of the two.
Nope, don't remember him at all. I was at the game where Bledsoe got hurt and Brady came in against the Jets.
That's pretty cool.
We left the game because Bledsoe got hurt and we're like, this game's over. We left the game and we listened to the rest of the game in the parking lot on the way out. And this Tom Brady guy, we're screwed. we're like, we have no chance. We also almost walked out of the Snowball game. We're at the Snowball game.
Wow.
And horrible weather. Brady fumbles. And we're like, all right, we're out of here. We're going to have like a 3 or 4 hour drive home. And I said, whoa. I think they're going to review it. The rest is history. We stayed and saw that. So
Good choice.
Yeah, not bad.
All right, that's going to do it for episode number 6 of the Maine Rundown. As always, you can follow us on X and Instagram at Maine Rundown Pod. Make sure to keep following, keep listening. We got clips coming out. It looks like, I think right now, we're probably not going to have an episode next week just because I know, Jeff, you're traveling and I've got some busy stuff going on. We'll see, what happens, but that might be the case. But we have some big guests coming up in the future. Make sure you're watching along and hopefully debuting new stuff and coming out with new stuff as always in the future. So for Jeff Christianberry, I've been Zach Tarenko on episode 6, and we will see you all very soon.